The Browns made some news today with a bit of a shakeup of their offensive coaching staff. Offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt has been let go from the organization, along with running back coach Stump Mitchell and tight ends coach T.C. McCartney. His contract wasn't renewed. He wasn't let go. This was first reported by Josina Anderson, with others following, like, Jake Trotter, Mary Kay Cabot. And at first glance, maybe some don't think there's a whole lot to this, as Alex Van Pelt, obviously not the main architect or play caller of the offense. That would be Kevin Stefanski. But as the offensive coordinator in general, Alex Van Pelt definitely had a role in other areas, such as, the week-to-week scheme, preparing for other opponents and their defenses, when certain types of plays should be ran in certain scenarios, that kind of thing, where it's a lot of behind the scenes stuff. That is a big voice in the room that is going to be experiencing a shakeup, but I do think that there is a solid reason for that shakeup to be happening. With that being that, I think you could tell that this past season, when Deshaun Watson was still healthy and playing, that there was a little bit of a styles clash between what this offense philosophically wants to do and what Deshaun Watson is most successful at and most comfortable with. I feel like in that case, something had to change between either him and the offensive philosophy, with Deshaun Watson's contract pretty much making sure that it wasn't going to be Deshaun Watson being changed. The Browns are locked into that contract no matter what. So I think it's worth mentioning when that offensive staff was brought in with Alex Van Pelt and them, that was back when the Browns were Baker Mayfield's team. So what Alex Van Pelt and Kevin Stefanski first implemented as the offense was a system that was built to be tailored around the strengths and weaknesses of Baker Mayfield. And while I do think that they tried to adjust some things with Deshaun Watson being the full-time starter this season, I feel like they were rolling with some new things while kind of keeping the foundation of the offense that had previously been implemented. And it became clear that consistent success wasn't likely to happen with Deshaun Watson in the offense. Now, we can talk about whether or not consistent good play from Deshaun Watson will ever come about. I think that's still a debate to be had. Obviously, injury cutting this season short. And before that, the injury against the Ravens, we had a really good game against a bad Titans team, and, an elite second half performance against the Ravens in that game after a pretty rough first half, to be honest. So while that final game was pretty encouraging, that's going to have to be built back up from scratch in the offseason, where earlier, he had games like the Pittsburgh game and the Colts game where he clearly wasn't ready to come back from injury. But honestly, I think moving on from AVP at least signifies that the building up of this offense is going to come from a bit of a different foundation this go-around. Stump Mitchell and T.C. McCartney is kind of in, I don't know territory for me, because I'm just not very well, I'm obviously not connected with the organization in any way, shape, or form as to what was the key moment as to why these moves were made. Maybe Stump Mitchell, he seems to be well liked by everybody, not just the running backs, but in that locker room in general. Maybe Mitchell just wants to calm down in general in life. The running back room this year wasn't great, but obviously I'm not sure how much of that you can put on the running back coach. When Nick Chubb goes down, any running back room that has Nick Chubb and then doesn't anymore is going to be worse after the loss of Nick Chubb. And also, when the offensive line is as banged up as it was, that can make life a lot tougher on these running backs as well. I feel like Jerome Ford did show some moderate improvement from the beginning of the year to the end of it, although I don't think he was ever an ideal NFL starting running back. I do feel like as we got deeper into the season, there was more of a likelihood that we'd get more consistent good play from him game to game. Kareem Hunt, at this point, I think he is what he is, where, yes, he was obviously, I think his addition back to the Browns was necessary in order to kind of boost the morale of the locker room a little bit, but honestly, besides that, I feel like we saw why he was still available after week 2 of the NFL season, to where just that burst wasn't quite the same for Kareem Hunt, even though I still think he runs with the same mentality that he always has. I just don't think it's quite all there the way it was a few years ago for him. Now moving on to the tight ends coach that wasn't renewed in T.C. McCartney. I know David Njoku's emergence did happen this year, but I'm wondering how much of that was the Joe Flacco effect, where, before that connection had kind of formed. It looked like it was going to be a little bit of another disappointingly quiet year for him under this big extension. And outside of that, Jordan Akins was brought in. He didn't make a whole lot of an impact. Harrison Bryant did find some gadget roles for himself, right? Taking some snaps as a quarterback for some QB sneaks and some 4th and 1 plays. But, outside of Njoku and Joe Flacco connecting as far as overall tight end play, it was fairly ho-hum. But I don't feel like there's any reason to panic about any of these moves. I feel like the front office and Stefanski feel like they both have earned at least a little bit of leeway with how they handled this season. I know Browns fans were not used to saying that with any sort of validity, and any sort of faith that's put in the people running this team is usually faith that is put in a bad place. But at this point, I am going to wait for stuff like this to fail before I'm hitting the emergency button, because again, while they haven't earned complete and total immunity, but I feel like there has been some leeway that this organization should be given by the fan base at this point. The latest coaching news is that the Browns have interviewed Deuce Staley for that opening running back coach positioning, with Deuce Staley playing in the league for a while. He was the running back coach for the Panthers this season before he was canned, along with Frank Reich and I think another offensive coach there. Cleveland has also received permission from the Titans to interview their current outside linebackers coach, Ryan Crow, who would reportedly move to being the defensive line coach if Crow were to be hired. Now, the Browns already have a defensive line coach in Ben Bloom, so Bloom might either be moved to coach somewhere else, whether it's somewhere else in the Browns defense or just somewhere else in a different organization in general. And I don't think the success of next season hinges on any one of these single moves working out or not. Obviously, if you have a bunch of bad positional coaches, then obviously that's going to mess up your season in some way, shape, or form. But I don't think that we're going to, if next season turns out to be a disaster, we're going to be looking back at this offseason and say, oh, well, if only we didn't hire Deuce Staley to be the running backs coach or anything. I feel like that's kind of a bit silly. I'm mostly interested in seeing who the new offensive coordinator becomes, even if Kevin Stefanski does retain play calling duties and is still the main mind behind the offense, which is what I think will happen. I do feel like Kevin Stefanski getting this team to the playoffs this year, I feel like he's, whether correctly or incorrectly, whatever you think, I think he will remain the play caller for the foreseeable future for at least one more year. And so whoever that offensive coordinator ends up being, I feel like he'll be more of a philosophical person to bounce ideas off of, and he'll obviously have some say in the offense and week-to-week planning. But again, it's going to be Kevin Stefanski really running the show on the offensive side of the ball, with the offensive coordinator probably just being a bit more friendly to whatever kind of offense they're going to be cooking up for Deshaun Watson next season. But that's going to do it for me in this video. Just a bit of an update on some Browns news that broke out today. You can let me know in the comment section what you think about these moves down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. If you did make it this far into the video, you can leave a like and a subscribe if you enjoyed the video and like to see more like it. But once again, thank you for watching, and I will see you at the next one.